Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Stuck in the Middle podcast episode. Back at it again. It's been a minute. So happy New Year. Happy 2024. Starting off the new year, man, with some joy in my heart because, man, my next guest I'm about to, talk to right here. I wouldn't say I've known him for so long, but for the little bit that I've known him, I've seen a little bit of transition. And to be able to talk to him today, about politics, different. Because the last time we spoke, I never dreamt, in my greatest imaginations that, this kid would be, I'm not say kid, man, you're a grown-ass man. He will be a politician someday. Like, right. Believe me, I never thought so. You know what I mean? So it's definitely going to be a great conversation. And I definitely I'm looking forward to learn a lot, in this episode. But let me not talk too much. If you've not subscribed to this channel, please hit that subscribe button at the bottom to get weekly notifications, and follow us on all social platforms and streaming platforms at SITM Podcast. That's uniform on all platforms. My guest today is Fitzgerald Mofor, born and raised in the DMV, a lawyer, used to be a football player, used to. But today, we're not talking about any of that. We're strictly talking politics because he decided that he wanted to run for the Board of Education, in Montgomery County. Welcome to the platform, Fitz.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm truly humbled by being on this platform. I remember, as you said, a couple of years ago, 2021, we did our sports platform and we had great conversations about football, basketball, but so much has changed during the time. We have different interests. So I'm just humbled to be here. And this is a great opportunity for me to disseminate our campaign message.
Nice. Hey, first of all, every time I see you now, you're in a suit, man. Like they always say, walk the part and act the part. How does it feel always being in a tie in a suit?
Well, I would say that I've gotten very used to it, and I also attribute a lot of this to my parents. Growing up, I remember actually a funny story. My first basketball tryout I ever had, my mother actually dressed me up to wear a suit to a basketball tryout, which is one of the funniest stories I always explain to my friends. But I feel very comfortable in it, but sometimes I have to get more stretchier material that could fit around my bail. I still have somewhat of a broad bail from the football days, but overall it's very comfortable, and I also like it too. It gives me a certain level of prestige also.
Nice. Hey, let's not, go too deep in the weeds without letting the people know who Fitzgerald is. Who is Fitzgerald, for those who don't know?
Well, I would consider myself a community leader, a community advocate, something that I've grown to have a very deep level of passion for over the couple of years. And this transition was very seamless because initially, right after football, I coached in this very small town on the outskirts of Mobile, Alabama, somewhat impoverished, very rural. And as time progressed, I started to realize that my interests are really changing. Athletics, sports, and football is something that will always be at the bottom of my heart. But as I've gone through my maturation process, I realized I have other interests too as well. And community engagement, civic engagement, really being there and giving back is something that has pretty much consumed my life over the last couple of years. So when someone asks, like, who are you? I would say I would just consider myself someone who likes to advocate on behalf of downtrodden, marginalized, and disenfranchised people.
Nice. We're going to get into all of that. But if I move on, to my next my next question here, you are running for the Board of Education for Montgomery County. I read somewhere one of your flyers, affiliated candidate. What does that mean, affiliated?
So I'm endorsed or quote unquote affiliated by the Maryland Forward Party. And the Maryland Forward Party is a very new party that was erected by Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang is somewhat of a centrist politician who started off as a businessman, and he ran in 2020 as a presidential candidate. Initially started very well, actually even beat Kamala Harris in her own state in California initially in that primary process. But Andrew Yang, he ran as a Democrat during that race, but he became so disillusioned by the Democrats' corporate posture, the posture to foreign wars, the military industrial complex, big business, and he's kind of takes more of a centered, somewhat progressive approach, quote unquote, and he thought it would be best to erect and institute his own political party across the nation. So you have the Maryland Forward Party, Virginia Forward Party, Ohio Forward Party, Utah Forward Party, and it essentially gives new candidates like myself who actually share a lot of policy initiatives that they wish to erect, like ranked choice voting, independent redistricting committees, open primaries. So they're essentially a party that would like to give new candidates like myself an opportunity to endorse them while also pushing their electoral reform initiatives too as well.
Nice.
So that essentially explains my affiliation with the Forward Party, but my official title as a candidate is just candidate running for the Montgomery County Board of Education at large, which encompasses all of Montgomery County, the 1.1 million residents and 160,000 students.
Tell me this, did you have to become a lawyer, to run for this position, or you just did your lawyer thing because, you are following, because your pops is a well, renowned lawyer. So are you following his footsteps, or you had to go through this process to be able to become one of the candidates, for the MCPS?
Well, the good thing about this position in public office is that lawyering isn't necessarily a requirement. And also, for the record, I'm not a barred attorney in the state of Maryland, but I do have a very strong interest in lawyering and law, American jurisprudence, common law. I got my master's in law in WashU in St. Louis a couple years ago, and essentially just gave me a better understanding of the fundamental intricacies in American jurisprudence, political science, constitutional law. But that's essentially, it's not necessarily a requirement or a prerequisite, but law and government, political science are inextricably linked. So it does give you a leg up intellectually, going back to get your law degree, and it'll help you essentially in the public sector.
Right. Okay. Tell us a little bit about your journey, running for the MCPS board. How is that so far?
So far has been fantastic. And I would like to give everybody a lot of context from where I started. So first, I was coaching football, and I started my professional career as a paraeducator, as I stated earlier, in this very poor, impoverished community in Alabama. And I noticed one of the biggest attributions to their lack of economic viability was also their lack of education. So I quickly realized that access to education can fundamentally reform and give someone the chance to move up the socioeconomic ladder. So once I figured that out, I came back home to Maryland. I taught for one more year or so at a Montessori school, and my heart always was just in government, always in poli-sci, and that just wasn't fulfilling enough. And I matriculated into the electoral politics scene. Then I worked with a state senator here in our hometown in the legislative district of 14 of Maryland. So I worked as this field operator, then worked as this campaign manager. And after a really successful election cycle, we were actually able to flip 2 seats in the Maryland legislature from red to blue with 2 Democratic senators. We elected the first African-American governor in Maryland history, the first Asian woman to lieutenant governor in American history, the first woman as a Maryland comptroller, and the first Black attorney general, all up and down the ballot. So it was very successful election cycle. Matriculated over to the Maryland legislature during the legislative session as a community liaison, and one of the best times I ever had. And I'm very thankful for Senator Zucker for giving me that opportunity. But even then, I just wanted more. Like, how can I continue to help my community? How can I continue to advocate on behalf of disenfranchised and marginalized people in my community? And I did a little bit of research, and I saw that the only 2 public office openings in Montgomery County were for Board of Education. So I immediately jumped in, and it just was perfect because I also started my career in public education. So I submitted my candidacy status organized, put together a team. And so far, it's actually one of the best experiences that I've ever had, and extremely fulfilling. Speaking with stakeholders, unions, students, the administrators, I learned so much, even about the nuances of government, just running for public office. And I mean, it's very fulfilling, and I couldn't be any happier.
Right. A lot of us, a lot of us who see our politicians on the screen, right? We see our politicians on the screen. I never thought in a million years that someday I'll even have brothers doing this. I mean, this is big. This is like saying anybody can really do this. Not to say that you're a chump or anything like that. No, anybody can really do it as so far as you set your mind to it, right? So I know I asked why education, or you hinted on it. But let's really talk about why education and why the diverse community in Montgomery County, right? You could have spoken about, you could have picked any other thing. Why education and why the diverse community?
So Montgomery County actually historically is probably one of the better school districts in the nation. They rank around 13. In terms of educational competency, graduation rates, college readiness rates, et cetera. Those, even standardized testing within the state, they do a very good job. But the problem is that we see large inequities in the education system. And you have the W schools in Up County, where there's Thomas Johnson, Bethesda, Chevy Chase, Winston Churchill, or even the elementary middle schools in that cluster. They do very well because those kids come from economically inclined backgrounds. But we see very small pockets of poverty here in Montgomery County, which are littered with minority students, whether it's in the down county, whether it's in the East County, like Burnsville, or down county like a downtown Silver Spring. A lot of these children come from economically disenfranchised or historically marginalized communities. And these kids, they don't have access to a robust and equitable education. I mean, if you go to the educational institutions, they attend schools in crumbling, dilapidated buildings. They don't have very robust CTE and comprehensive programs. A lot of their teachers are overworked and underpaid, and these are predominantly Title I schools, and they do get federal funding, but it's just not enough. Teacher retention is not there. After school activities are not there for a lot of these children. So we see essentially two different worlds in Montgomery County education. School communities where they're exceeding and they're doing very well, and then you have other areas of Montgomery County where they're not doing very well. And I want to come in and essentially advocate on behalf of those children. Unfortunately, we've seen Montgomery County prioritize other political endeavors, and that's at the detriment of these children. So that's essentially what thrusted me into this race.
Yeah, nice. I actually went to Rockville High School.
Yeah,
actually went to Rockville High School. Go Rams. So like most of the things you're saying, right? Like this is like I can go back in my mind and kind of pick out those things that I actually seen during, my time at Rockville High School, which was I think 3 years before, right? Those things that really irked me, especially about, especially being, not just African, but, Black kid at that, with, in a school that's at least 75%, on Caucasian. But anyways, not to diverse, from, our topic at hand, please, what do you identify as the most pressing challenges, right, in MCPS, and what are your proposed solutions? Like, if you can give the first three.
So the first three, and there's so many, but the first three that I could go off right now is the achievement gap. The achievement gap is a very pernicious, existing right here in Montgomery County. I mean, for example, you have a school like Montgomery Village Middle School, where 5% of the kids, and this is a school that's predominantly minority, whether it's African or Latino, 5% of the kids are competent in reading. You have a situation where only in grades 3, in very minority clusters here in Montgomery County, only 20% of these kids are competent in math. These kids have no chance or no opportunity to be very viable competitors in the job market if they don't possess very basic skills like literacy or competency in math. So the achievement gap is another issue. And you also see in truancy percentages, like JF Kennedy High School, where 11th and 12th graders, 50% of them aren't showing up to school. I know that also leads to their lack of overall educational competency within that cluster too as well. We also have a very, very poor system in terms of transparency here in Montgomery County. So we have the achievement gap that we need to reform. Transparency is another one where Montgomery County has this long-standing practice where we'll see educators that are principals in one school, and over 5, 6, 7 years, they'll have 25 substantiated people who are alleging that this principal has sexually assaulted them or harassed them in the school. But you have MCPS investigators that will pretty much clean up evidence, hide evidence, and then hire the same recycled law offices like Jackson and Lewis that will not really facilitate a very impartial investigation. And so it's not until the Inspector General of the county steps in and does a very thorough investigation and realizes that essentially this principal has terrorized teachers, staff, paraprofessionals also, and students within the building. And unfortunately, this teacher actually was got a higher position from Farquhar Middle School to Paint Branch Middle School. So that's, in terms of transparency and accountability in MCPS, that's a problem. So that would be the second one. And I'll also talk about some solutions too after. The third one is wage parity for paraprofessionals. I speak to so many paraprofessionals across the county, and there's so many, it's a broad consensus with their grievances, lack of pay, lack of support from staff development, retaliation from blowing the whistle on administrative malfeasance. And then we also need to work with the unions, the SEIU Local 500, to ensure that this good faith collective bargaining agreement when they're negotiating the salaries with MCPS. So another one is actually the lack of CTE schools. In Montgomery County, there are only 3 CTE schools, and that's Thomas Edison School of Technology, Wheaton, and Seneca Valley. We have a $5.7 billion capital budget. I know that in the last budget appropriation process for the county council, county executive, and board of education, they appropriated $685 million in the capital budget for new schools, but none of them will go towards building new technological or CTE schooling. Also, the school district in and of itself, which Montgomery County Board of Education, they have direct dominion over the operating budget, a $3.3 billion operating budget. There's not any real fidelity towards proliferating a very comprehensive curriculum around CTE. So CTE is another problem that we have. And political polarization here in Montgomery County, where everyone is so entrenched in their partisan divides and their tribalistic adherences, where that kind of takes a precedence over proliferating a very strong, equitable, and robust education system. So those are about 3 to 4 things, 5. I'm sure there's a couple of litany of other things that I could add to, but those are the 5 things I would say that are probably the most pressing issues here in Montgomery County.
So yes. How do you plan on tackling these educational disparities, and ensuring, equitable opportunities for all students?
So the number one thing for especially the achievement gap, unfortunately, the achievement gap is something that's persisted for over 20 years, but it's only been exacerbated during the pandemic and school closures. Perfect example, in 2019, 54% of kids in grade 3 were proficient in math. By 2021, only 22% of those kids. That's a 31% decrease. And the majority of them will obviously be African-American students. So we have to institute extended learning measures. Actually, the Center of Economic Policy Research, they did a case study essentially saying there are 6 to 7% educational gains from extended learning. And that's something that I will be a crusader on, is making sure that kids have resources to actually close that achievement gap. And this, some people could call this anecdotal, but I beg to differ. The students that participate in extracurricular activities, whether it's in a sport or club or debate club or arts or craft or welding, whatever the case may be, a lot of those students had a higher propensity of having a 3.0, going to college, and being productive members of the community. So another thing too, in terms of tackling that achievement gap process or the achievement gap that we have in MCPS is that individualized and personal learning. There's some students, they just can't function in the classroom size of 20 to 25 people. It's just not feasible. So we need additional staff, support staff, which essentially goes towards my part in terms of wage parity for paraeducators. And that will mitigate a lot of the educational learning losses that we're seeing at MCPS. Another thing too is a lot of these kids aren't simply interested in going to college. They need CTE options that are available for them. And it doesn't only have to be technical. One thing that I see is a lot of kids don't know that Maryland has a minority participation requirement on government projects. So if you could get your MBE or SBLE with WSSC, you can essentially become a small business and minority business, and you will have an advantage on winning government projects. And these are educational information that a lot of kids, they just don't have that information to their avail. So if we give kids more opportunities, more resources, more chances in the education system, that will pretty much boost or induce the overall confidence that children have in the education system, and will have them engage more, mitigate truancy percentages. So those are a couple of things that I would like to see in terms of actually closing the achievement gap. Now, we also talked about the lack of overall transparency in the education system here. The Board of Education only has 5 committees, and they don't really necessarily have a transparency and accountability comparison. I know they have a shared office of accountability, and that's the bureaucratic side of MCPS, not the elected side. But unfortunately, that office hasn't been too effective in terms of transparency. So I'd like to see an overall transparency and accountability committee in the Board of Education. And here we will have thorough actual investigations and use independent arbiters or the Inspector General's office essentially for all investigations here in Montgomery County. And that would also be a mechanism we can use to have overall more parental involvement. Now, for CTE and career and technical education, that's something that
CTE stand for? Career
Yes.
Okay.
So before they used to call it vocational learning.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So now it's CTE, career and technical education, and these things could really fix this. It's through the budget. Now, the budget, especially, and let me go back, especially with transparency too as well. And this is another thing that we have a problem too in terms of paying the teachers, the paraeducators, right? So every year, the Montgomery County, but say to the, you're so adorable. So adorable. It's so cute. But so in the operating budget, every fiscal year essentially starts with the superintendent. She has an operating budget request, and the Board of Education, they have to vote on it. Then it goes to the county council. The county council has to approve it. The county exec also has to approve it in his budget request. And this process usually takes until maybe March or April. And after the recommended and approved budget actually gets passed, there's a portion of the operating budget called the instructional salaries. Now we have this longstanding practice, unfortunately, where members on the Board of Education, superintendent, they move millions and millions of dollars out of the instructional salaries, which is the portion that's used to pay paraeducators. So if we stop that and we can facilitate innovative budget solutions, that's another thing we could also have more teachers for CTE opportunities, more teachers for paraprofessionals, and more teachers for extended learning too as well. And also even provide more safety and security here in the education system in terms of hiring more security guards, which we need, and also bringing back SORs into the school, which is another conversation that we would have later too as well. So those are a couple of things in terms of policy implementations. Now, in terms of quelling political polarization, there isn't necessarily any policy approach that we can. That's more something rhetorical. Objectively speaking, honestly speaking, there's no policy that we can put in except for the more so inclusive curriculum that's been extremely divisive, but that's also a MSDE Annapolis issue, and it's also pending civil litigation. So those are some of our approaches in terms of policy to kind of fundamentally reform the problems here with the MCPS.
Okay. All of this cannot be possible without, they say it takes a village to raise a child. You know what I mean? Same way as it takes, the people, right, to come together and put you in this position, right? So, and the people, as the teachers, the parents, right? So how do you plan on involving them in this whole process, especially in your decision-making process? Because about what, like we elect our, officials and they go in and the things that they promise to do, they turn around and not do them and they go do their own agenda, their own biddings, right? So how do you plan on bringing parents and teachers along, right? The journey, say you get the position.
So the one thing, there's two things. I'll start with number one. The Board of Education, they have closed working sessions and open working sessions. And in my opinion, I think the Board of Education has way too many closed sessions. There's no real transparency on what their elected officials are doing. And during open sessions and open testimony, they may have 1 minute and 30 seconds. I mean, if we put a clock for 1 minute and say, hey, can you air out your grievance? I don't believe 1 minute is long enough time for a parent to adequately touch on each issue that they're facing, especially if it's more so especially even in just niche issues. So those are two things that I'd like to see just on one front in terms of more parental involvement. Secondly, the Board of Education, they have total dominion over voting on administrators and principals into the school. Now, that principal who I spoke about before, and he's had those 21 or 25 sexual assault allegations, and that's over the span of from 2016 to about 2022 to 2023. And the Board of Education unanimously passed him to be the principal of Paint Branch. Now, objectively speaking, after the Inspector General's thorough investigation, they said that the board members don't know. They didn't know that he had and some people call BS or crap on that. But I always tell them I can only go off of, objective, thorough investigations through the Inspector General's office. Now, one way to actually mitigate that is that the parents knew. These are things that I've heard as a member of my community for over the last 2 years. Some way, somehow, the elected officials did not know, but the parents knew. So I would like to see the parents more involved in terms of the hiring processes of administrators here in Montgomery County. I want the parents in that cluster to vote on their principals. So that's something that I think it's somewhat, it has very high levels of ingenuity. It's creative, it's new ideas. We need fresh ideas to kind of involve the parents more here in our education system.
Nice. You probably touched on this, but if you could please give us just one educational policy, right, in the MCPS that you would like to change or improve, right? Elaborate on that a little bit.
So one MCPS policy that I would like to change, they're so divisive. That's why I'm a little afraid to necessarily cover them, but we have to confront these issues. One is SROs. We need the SROs back in the school. It's an existential threat to student safety, teacher safety, security safety, administrative safety. There was actually a really big fight at BCC last week where a security guard went to the hospital, principals were knocked down, and it took the school a long time to actually get police support in the school because the education system has effectively removed officers from the school system. Before, there usually would be about, I think, one or two SROs, school resource officers in each school. But after the summer rioting in 2020 and the repudiation of law enforcement became something that many political operatives kind of taken a liking to, they thought maybe they can apply national trends or issues that are happening in other jurisdictions and apply that here. So after that, you have the county council, the state attorney's office, the police division that came together and they put this memoranda of understanding where they have CEOs and restorative justice officers in the school. But the CEOs only work part-time. There are only 26 CEOs for a school district that has 206 schools. and they can't actually be in the school, and they cannot be part of the consequencing or the consequence or disciplining process. So they essentially was a very smart and sly way of just removing all police officers within the school. And we see that that's actually, in terms of, is actually put teacher safety, student safety in peril. And it actually goes against Maryland law too as well. Maryland law says that every school has to have substantive, meaningful, and strong police presence within the school. That's the law. And we don't have that. So that's actually one of the biggest things that I would like to change here in MCPS. And I also think it's actually affected overall police morale here. Now, you have the county council where they've instituted these police commissions for police accountability. They've instituted bills that would restrict police officers from enforcing traffic law. They removed the SRRs in the school, and we're seeing a very stark decline within the police force. 250 staff are short. I mean, they even have $20,000 signing bonuses, plenty of other amenities for new hires, and they still can't hire new police officers because the morale is just so low. So it's affected public safety outside of school and affected public safety within school too as well.
Yeah,
yes,
I remember
that was the number one thing I would like to change.
I hear that. I mean, that was big because I remember when I was in high school, we used to have security officers, right? Roaming the hallways, especially, when there are fights or, when, I mean, you can't even skip school, right? Because they're like posted on all doors and, all corners, man. Like, and they're just right there to enforce discipline, right, within the school. And they're also part of like that disciplinary committee within the school, which was really great because, I mean, us, as a teenager in school, all you want to do is beat on chairs or probably, hazel other kids and things like that. So that's a very great point. That's a very great point. The policy to, bring back.
And I would say this, just honestly speaking, the police officers were removed because they said that police officers were adding to the school to prison nexus or the school to prison pipeline, which I have a personal story with over disciplinary actions that can lead to children being institutionalized. Sure, we can have that conversation in terms of overdiagnosis with ADHD or prescription pills like Adderall and Ritalin, et cetera, so on. But the Office of Legislative Oversight, they've done a study and they said that the SORs in the school, there's no statistical data that corroborates the claim of them being in the school, that actually leading and fueling the school to prison nexus. So I definitely would love to tackle issues that continually to fuel the school to prison pipeline, but that's just not one of them. But I hear the concerns of the progressives in our county, but we need to get back to normalcy. We need to get back to the center, things that have worked in the past. And actually, Montgomery County has one of the better police departments in the nation, especially the SRO system, which is nationally recognized too as well. So we just have to get away from the politics and stick to things that essentially work.
Yeah. Man, Moore County don't play, man. They pull you over, like 6 of them right behind you. 6 of them right behind you for just not navigating. But oh man, how do you view the role of technology, right, and innovative teaching methods, right, in the future of MCPS? I mean, I'm huge on technology, and I feel as though the future will always be tech. So how do you view that in MCPS?
So artificial intelligence now has become such a big part, a big sector here in terms of just overall technological advancements. And from what I've seen in terms of the resources to the avail of students, they're kind of lagging behind in terms of AI, new, innovative, and ingenuity in the technological realm. Now, the governor says that he's going to pass through executive authority additional funding for artificial advancement within government, and hopefully that expands within the education system. But the problem that we're having is that MCPS and the state of Maryland, we're budget strapped, and we're seeing a budgetary deficit over the next 10 years, and we're going to see large cuts to transportation. And I don't know how we can add additional funding in terms of advancements in artificial intelligence when MSDE, the Maryland Blueprint Plan, is $3.3 billion over the next 10 years. and the state can barely have it solved. And at MCPS, we heavily rely on MSD or Annapolis funding. But there are also some things that I see that Montgomery County can actually do, and that goes back to CTE in terms of technological education. For example, Thomas Edison is a high school that has very robust infrastructure in terms of technology and ingenuity. So if you want to see a little bit more innovation in AI and have that implemented in the education system, we need to have real fidelity in a capital budget and to give kids the space, to facilitate actually putting these new AI technological advancements.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What's your approach to preparing students, right, for a rapidly changing world and workspace? Because I mean, right now, well, not right now, but towards the end of last year or mid last year to the end of it, right, we see a lot of job cuts, especially in technology, right? During the pandemic, we've seen a lot of folks go into, the healthcare just because of travel nursing and things like that, right? But now the pandemic is over, you see a lot of people trying to diversify into technology, right? And there's a lot of job cuts there. So how are you planning on, steering these kids, right, to prepare themselves for this changing world and the workforce for that?
And I know I sound like a broken record, and I'm gonna say it again. CTE.
Say it again and again.
Yeah, okay. Now, and before it used to be a dirty word because Montgomery County is one of the most educationally, intellectually inclined districts in the country. And traditionally, we send our kids to college, to the high chambers of academia, and they go to prestigious schools. And after that, they become lawyers, doctors, bureaucrats in DC, or legislators on Capitol Hill. That's something that Montgomery County is very well known for. We have George Kavanaugh. Sorry, not Kavanaugh. The Supreme Court Justice.
Yeah.
Kavanaugh, even though that's not Montgomery County Public Schools, he went to Georgetown Prep. Montgomery County native. So it used to be frowned upon in terms of prioritizing CTE learning. CTE doesn't only have to deal with technological and ingenuity. It has career too as well, whether it's like nursing or whether it's law enforcement or culinary arts or whether it's in the theater with the more of the art students that act, music, barbers, HVAC that does with air conditioning, plumbing. These are things as society changes. And there's so many good things. It also will add a new workforce within the local government. It will add a new tax base, a new stream of revenue that local government can get out of these kids immediately right after they come out of high school. And right now, college is just not feasible. A lot of these kids are leaving college with insurmountable debt, $300,000 in debt, and it's only becoming more and more expensive. So we have to institute policies that are common sense to give kids a chance to adapt to even the high cost of living, not just here in Montgomery County, but in Maryland or nationally in other different places too as well.
Yeah, Montgomery County is very expensive.
Yeah.
It's clean though. It's clean. It has good reputation. So, you're gonna have your hands full for sure, my brother. You're gonna have your hands full. Let's talk a little bit about wellness and safety. What would you advocate for to ensure the safety and mental well-being for the students in MCPS?
So I know we covered SROs and officers back in the school, but we also need to have a real conversation in terms of the school system providing real amenities for mental health counselors. Now, counselors that the school system have already, they're just there for scheduling, setting you up for maybe college, what you want to major in, which college, when you go to
the career center to go, pick out, your career. What you want to do in the future.
Yes.
Things like that.
We need real psychiatrists in the education system. Unfortunately, post-pandemic, we've seen a large increase in suicide ideation, depression, anxiety, and that was from kids being locked in their homes for over a year. Kids are social beings, And this social media stuff, unfortunately, has destroyed the mind of the youth moving forward. So the school system publicly, we have to institute mitigation efforts to avert some of these things. And this also goes back to the operating budget. We need to hire psychiatrists, mental health professionals that are in the school system. We can't rely on the parents. A lot of children don't necessarily come from economically inclined backgrounds, and they don't have very strong health care in their home where, they can pay a $20 some of them probably aren't even covered. Well, and here's the thing. There's some kids that come from, their family, they do extremely well. They have great jobs and their jobs cover the healthcare. For example, growing up as teachers have very good healthcare packages, but there are a lot of kids that come from single parent homes. A lot of kids that their parents actually rely on government assistance. They don't have very strong, robust healthcare packages that they can be a part of. So the public school system, they have to step in. They have to facilitate these things. So mental health is something that we need here in the public pedagogy.
Man, remember I used to go to, when in high school, and, I go to the counselor, and all they'll do is say, hey, you should take this class for this one or that one for that one. And that's about it. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's about it. If you don't have somebody at home who could really, steer you through this and also say, calm down or focus more on these areas because I see you got great talents in these areas, it's just going to be like a swimming pool with a bunch of people in it and no how do you call them people? Lifeguards, right? No lifeguards to say, hey, if somebody's drowning, let me jump in there and save them, So yeah, definitely. Shout out to you for definitely thinking about that. Mental health is one big thing that, we definitely need to be bringing into schools, especially, with other things in the news like, shootings and, things like that. Yeah. So definitely, something to bring back to, or not bring back, but implement, right, within schools.
And I have my criticisms for the county and MCPS, but I would give the superintendent credit where she said she's very staunchly committed to providing these mental health care professionals, although they're going to roll back on ESSER funding, which is federal funding for secondary schools. That would help and would become some relief for school districts, and they're clawing those back as we have these budgetary crises here on the federal government, and also we see here in the state, which is aside from the ESSER funding. So I'll also give her credit as the superintendent to actually providing real fidelity with mental health care professionals within the school. And I'm not too opposed with a lot of the restorative justice officers too in the school. We can chew gum and walk at the same time. You don't have to push the officers out and then only have restorative justice officers in there. We don't have to push the restorative justice officers and only have the SROs. We can have both. We have the financial infrastructure to do so.
Right. Before we keep going, how can people connect with you? Right. Do you accept donations? Where can they donate and all that?
Well, on Twitter, you can just put Fitzgerald Mofor, and our campaign page is right there in our bio, or on Instagram, you can put Fitz Mofor, FITZ Mofor, the number 4 MCPS BOE. Right on Instagram, you can find our Instagram campaign page, and we also have our link in our bio. We also can accept donations there too, and those are our 2 probably most active campaign websites in terms of social media. And then we also have our email, Fitzgerald Mofor, the number 4 MCPS BOE at AOL.com, and Facebook too as well. So those are our best streams of connection for any stakeholders or those who are viewing this channel.
Yeah, and all of that's going to be in the show notes, guys, for you to, for easy access. When you are elected,
oh man,
so I just did that. When you are elected, what are your long-term goals for MCPS? Right? How would you measure those? And how would you measure the success?
Long-term, overall, in the next 4 and hopefully 8 years, I can see re-election. My vision for MCPS is that in our multicultural enclave, that we'll see a lot of the minority kids catch up to the Asian, the white children. I'm sorry for not being politically correct. I should call them the Caucasian children. I would love to see them catch up. For example, in terms of college readiness and low standardized testing, the ACT, the average score for African Americans it's I think a 18 out of 36, whereas the Asian kids are at a 30 out of 36. Long term, I want to see that gap decrease and have the African American kids from an 18 to at least a 25 or 27. SAT as well, which is another college readiness standardized testing, where the average score on 3 parts for African American kids are about 930, and the Asian kids are at 1200. So I need to see that gap decrease. That's my goal overall long term. We can no longer have only 5% of kids at middle schools that are proficient in reading or math or science, etc. That's erroneous. That's a problem. We need to see that jump up to 50%. Why not? These kids have the intellectual capabilities to do so. We as elected officials here in the local government, we just have to push them. We have to give them the resources to be successful within the education system. So long term, more than anything, is closing that achievement gap, more CTE opportunities in MCPS, actual competitive wages for paraprofessionals, not just the paraeducators, support staff like the janitors, security, bus drivers, etc. And I would like to see us get back to the centrist bipartisan consensus. I remember when I went to MCPS schools, the only thing that we cared about was educational competency. That was the standard. Now it seems like everyone is so focused on pushing in their abstract political theory or their ideology within the education system, and I just don't know where that came from. That has to end. So those are things that I would like to see long term once I leave.
Yeah, they try to keep folks like us at the bottom because because they don't like to see us keep going up and up that ladder. But what legacy, other than everything you just mentioned right in that previous question I asked you, other than that, what legacy would you like to live, right, once it's all said and done, right, as a member of the MCPS Board of Education?
I would like to leave a legacy of an outsider. As we talked about 3 years ago, no one would ever imagine that I would become a political operative or someone who's in the political arena. So the legacy that I want to leave is an outsider infiltrating the system, leaving the door open and letting all the other outsiders that come in and infiltrate too as well. It's this like cabal, this consortium of political insiders in a room, and they wield so much power and influence, and they make decisions over our society without us. They leave us out. And that's something, it's a problem that has to change. We need more outsiders to come in. Their voices need to be heard. So that's the legacy that I want to leave, is the political outsider that opened the door for the broad masses to come in and engage within the political system.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's big. That's big. You know what I mean? First of all, or second of all, third of all, I don't know which part of that we in right now. Do you think you're too young for this?
Absolutely not. And that's the problem. I think we have a gerontocracy in terms of our elected officials. I don't want to call anyone Steny Hoyer. I know it's congressional office, sure, but it's somewhat germane and it's relevant. Steny Hoyer is 85 running for re-election. James Clyburn is 82, has been in office since 1980s.
82 years old?
82. Mitch McConnell's 81.
Oh yeah, the man's can't even remember certain things, bro. Like
Diane Winston died in office at maybe 90. I mean, Chuck Grassley is 80. Our 2 leading presidential candidates are almost 80. We have a gerontocracy in our political system, and it's a problem. We need younger, more enthused, energized candidates like myself. And part of the problem is these guys have been in the political game for so long. They're bought off by corporate interests, party hacks, political insiders, whatever the case may be, what have you. We need more fresh faces that haven't been corrupted by the political system. Actually, I lean into my youth more than anything. I tell people I'm 28, I'm young, and I think that's an advantage in my political campaign more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If I'm not mistaken, I think that is it the mayor of Baltimore? Is it Young too?
Yes.
Yeah.
32 or 33.
Yeah, definitely. Man, kudos to you, man, for even, like I said, once I had seen your page, I'm like, I called Forbes. I'm like, yo, is this real? I texted at you, like, yo, is this real? And they're all like, yeah, man, it's real. I said, yo, man, kudos, shout out to you for that. You know what I mean? But hey, let me read straight off your website, your policy priorities, right? Closing the achievement gaps with research-based policies, instituting safeguards for accountability and transparency, wage parity for support professionals, quelling policy polarization. Man, I need a dictionary. Prioritizing vocational learning and mandating extended learning for students that fall behind educational competencies and standards, and a lot more. These are some of the policies that you are prioritizing, as you are campaigning here. So, is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like for the people to know?
Yes. We've covered it a little bit, but I kind of want to expound on it even more. I need everyone to fully engage in the political process. In Gaithersburg had a local election in November of last year. There are maybe 39,000 residents in Gaithersburg. I believe only 11,000 of them showed up to vote. I'm telling you, the implications are too high for us not to participate in local elections down ballot. These, whether it's your school board member, your county council member, your county executive, the policies and legislation that they institute, they directly affect you. We get so caught up by presidential elections, whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump or the third party candidates, but it takes a while before some of their policies trickle all the way down to you on a local level. So that's something that I'm for all of us to get in. I talked about it a little bit. I kind of want to expound more. Your voice is needed more. We can no longer allow special interest groups, nonprofits, and political insiders essentially dictate who our legislators and lawmakers are. We, the people, we have to come in and demand that our voices are heard. So we talked about it a little bit, but that's something I kind of want to expound on additionally.
Now that's actually big, because I remember last election, right, local elections here, and somebody posed me a question, and I was very lost by the question. I'm like, where are you getting this question from? It's like, you're not following local politics? I'm like, man, I can't even tell you who the governor is, bro. And when I was saying those words, right, I felt really embarrassed because I'm like, it's right here in the tip of my nose, you know what I mean? Why am I not worried about this, but I'm worried about the national elections when right here locally where, change start? Because they say charity begins at home, right? Right here where it begins, I have no clue, but I'm here debating about something on a national level, something that before it even comes down, right, it would take so long because of all, the checks and balances, and all that. But just to say, I started following my local state politics, even here in my, in my district. And eventually, as kids coming, and all that, it'll be beneficial to know what kind of policies are there, right, in terms of school, in terms of, even housing, all these different things, right? So definitely partaking in local elections is very, very big. And again, man, kudos to you, because if we don't see folks like you doing this, the system damn near does not really favor us, you know what I mean? So to see folks like you, doing this, it makes me, for one, feel like, we do have a fighting chance, because hey, if my brother's on top of a plum stick, I expect him to be throwing black plums down, not red. So,
Absolutely.
you know what I'm saying? Yeah. How does Pops and Mom feel about this as we close?
So, okay, now I would say that I'm so appreciative of my parents, because throughout my life, they've always been on board and have been extremely supportive on whatever crazy or off the wall idea that I come up with. I mean, I remember when I left the scholarship at a Division II school that I did very well, won freshman of the year, and I said, Mom, Dad, it's not enough. I want to go walk on and pay for college and try out for this Division I team. And most parents would say, absolutely not. I'm not supporting that. You're on your own and you actually need to go back to that old school. But they said, okay, let's try it. If these are your aspirations, these are your goals, we will fully support you. And it comes full circle as a 20-year-old and the 13th largest school district in the country. I said, hey, mom and dad, I had this crazy idea again. I want to run for school board and participate in local politics. They said, okay, let's do it again. I will fully support your endeavors in anything you do. And they've been very supportive since day one. And I can't thank them enough. As a matter of fact, I couldn't even make it this far if it wasn't for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, shout out Pops and Moms, man. And definitely, the siblings and the friends, that, rally, behind you. And speaking of, the friends, siblings and all that, yo, how did you okay. To wake up one day and say, I'm gonna run for public office is one thing.
Yes.
But to find the people to stand behind you and support your cause, man, that's a whole different topic. How did you get the folks to believe in you? Please tell me.
I mean, the thing is, I always tell people that we grew up in a political household. I always loved politics. Faye, she was a poli-sci extraordinaire. She went to school for that. Free was always a politics observer, even my gov too as well. And our grandfather did politics also. So something that we always observed and something that we always discussed in-house. But as of recently, as I became more overtly political to the public, they said, hey, I mean, this is something that we always done and we'll fully support you. And that's the great thing about people like yourself. Even you inviting me on your platform, it's huge and monumental support, and I can't thank you enough. And I truly attribute that to God. There's not anything that I did specifically, or I'm just so intellectually inclined, or to pray that I was able to kind of just convince everyone to coalesce behind this movement. This is something that, God supported us in, and we're just extremely thankful to be here.
Mm-hmm. Man, appreciate you, man. When I said, when I seen your page and seeing what you are doing, I said, ain't no way I'm not inviting my man to come on Stuck in the Middle. Let's talk about this. You know what I mean? I had to, like my body was just itching and I kept texting like, yo, what are we doing? What are we doing? You know what I mean? But thank you for, definitely finding the time in your busy schedule, right, to sit with me on this. Like I promised you again, we're going to move this to my Palm Wine Central podcast where you're going to have, other folks who are actually living in the DMV and, they can actually ask you, and they went to school in PG County, Moore County, they can ask you questions about that. Maybe some things that, some reservations that they had or still have, right? Or some ideas that they might also have too, right? And also send it to my other brother podcast, Now You Know Podcast. So go talk to those folks too and, share, your experiences and let's keep driving your campaign going. You know what I mean? So again, shout out to you, shout out to the crew, shout out to your whole campaign team. For supporting you and the parents too as well. You know what I mean? My guest today, ladies and gentlemen, keep this in mind, especially in Montgomery County. Memorize that face. Is Fitzgerald Mofor. He's running for the Board of Education, the Board of Education in Maryland, MCPS. Montgomery County. Hope I said that right. Hopefully this is just the start. You know what I mean? Because as I was thinking about it, I was like, damn, I might wake up one day and this man is telling me he's running for, the president of the United States. That's when I'll come and say, hey, bro, please just give me Minister of Health.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? But now, speaking of that, what really are your future plans in this political sphere of things? Where do you want to see yourself?
I haven't really thought about it. And in fact, sometimes I think that's even some of the problem with political office. You see a lot of candidates who are so enthused by office climbing, and they're always thinking about the next position, and they're extremely ambitious. And I think that's a good thing, but to a certain extent. But I just haven't thought about it. I haven't really sat down with myself and had a discussion on what's the next step. The only thing that I've only thought about is that there are a lot of African-American boys, let me just be frank and candid, a lot of African-American boys that look just like me, and they don't have access to very basic things here in our education system. And if I don't jump in and speak on their behalf, no one else will. So that's the only thing that I thought about is being on the Board of Education for the next 8 years, seeking re-election in 2028, and being there until 2032, and at least 8 years. That's the only thing that I thought of, and actually radically reforming our education system here in Montgomery County over the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Man, kudos to you again, man. You know what I'm saying? Somebody like me, when I think of, running for public office like that, I think of first the time that got put into it. I also think that, guys are not getting paid enough for all the time that you put into this. You know what I mean? So what the heck? But the greater part of that is the amount of people that you get to talk to, right? Your network and net worth, I guess, right? So I've seen, pictures of you. You've met Senator Cory Booker, I think that's his name, and, a few other folks. So, man, keep doing your thing, man. Hopefully I could, hopefully we'll get to meet face to face someday, you know what I mean? And I could definitely shake your hand and say, yo, my guy, you definitely, opened like they say, you open a can of worms. You've definitely opened it for our community, right? Kids that did not think that they can jump up and do this, right? They definitely can see you as an example and emulate, in your footsteps. So keep doing your thing, man. Keep doing your thing. My guest today is Fitzgerald Mofor. Keep that name. If you're in America, go vote. When is election? When is election, bro? When is election?
May 14th is election day, but early vote is May 2nd to May 9th. And we need that huge monumental turnout from early vote, whether it's mailing, and we can even actually go to your home, pick up your ballot. You have to request your ballot from the State Board of Elections. They'll mail it to you. I'm also a licensed volunteer with the State Board of Elections, so we can also help people get registered to vote too as well. So yeah, early vote May 2nd. If you don't want to go in, you can do it by mail. I can pick up your ballot for you, and then the actual primary day is on the 14th of May.
Wake your lazy ass up and go vote. Get your lazy ass up and go vote, man. This is for a good cause. This is for a brother who would fight for, a minority rights, who will fight to make sure that, we are not staying at the bottom. We're actually, keep progressing up and up. One thing that I failed to, I know I'm running out of time here. One thing that, I forgot to ask, hopefully, I can ask you in our next session that we'll sit down. It's about diversity and inclusion. Right. We've been seeing a decline since, the pandemic came with George Floyd, death. We had diversity, equality, and inclusion, right? Our workplaces and schools as well. Now there's a decline in that. Not really sure why, but I'll keep that. I'll put that in the back burner for us to discuss on that later. You know what I mean? But just keep that in mind that I definitely have that as my very first question when I sit down with you again on the platform to discuss. How you can reach him will be in the show notes. How you can donate to his campaign and his endeavors will be in the show notes as well. Please, 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 please. May 2nd through May 14th.
Absolutely, the voting period. Well, yes.
Exactly. Early voting May 2nd through May 14th, which May 14th is actually voting day. Y'all know what to do, man. Y'all know what to do. Let's make this happen. I see my brother in that position. I've already seen it. So let's make it happen. This is Talking with a Podcast, a platform for entrepreneurs, innovators, movers, and shakers of all platforms. Of all backgrounds, right? Come here to share their experiences on how to break the mold. Today, my guest is Fitzgerald Mofor. Is running for the MCPS Board of Education. Please go out and vote, for my brother. Let's make this happen. May 2nd through May 14th. This year, let's make it happen. I know there's also a presidential election year. So let's just take that mentality that we have with that and put that here too as well. So yeah, I'm Uncle AK, your host, and follow us on all social and social media platforms, SITM Podcast for weekly notifications. Hit that subscribe button and hit that follow button as well. Rate, review, leave comments if you want, or if you don't want, share with your aunties and uncles, even your ex. Why not? All right. Thank you for chatting with me, Fitz. Again, keep doing your thing, man. And we are out.
It's Fizzy Fitz.